Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today going to be just showing you something that I see pop up quite a lot on the Discovery Facebook pages and forums and stuff. It's a potential quick, cheap or free fix for some air suspension problems. So I had this was the main reason why I got this car cheap when I first bought it. I've discussed it in previous videos, but I had it happen to me over the weekend while I was driving. So I figured now's a good time to do a video on what to do and what the symptoms are, what to look for. Generally this is a fairly good go-to thing anyway if you're having suspension problems. It isn't just related to this one issue I'm going to talk about. As I say, it's free, it just requires a bit of cleaning, and seems to happen quite a lot. This is the third time it's happened in 2 years of ownership, so it's a relatively common thing to happen, and I've heard of it solving other people's issues as well. So basically what it is, so I had suspension warning light come on basically, and plugged it into my gap tool, and straight away you can see the first thing I do with that is go on to the test values. So you end up with a screen like this, and you can control each corner as you so wish, up, down, whatever you want. You control the whole car, front axle, rear axle, and everything. But most importantly, what it gives you is these numbers here. These are offsets from 0. 0 is your set standard ride height. I think it's -50 is access and +50 is off-road, but I can't remember. It might be +100, I can't remember now. But anyway, you can play around with it, you can level this. This is a very, very good tool if you've got a communication issue or something on the air suspension that isn't a leak, that enables you. So if you have a compressor go down, well, no, actually, no, compressor's not relevant. But if you have an electrical issue with one of the sensors or wiring or ECU or anything like that, you can basically gauge. You can either use this or you can do it manually with a tape measure. But from this, you can pump up each corner. So if you're on level ground, or not even level ground, it has to be flat ground, you can adjust each corner until it's right, and then you can either pull the fuse under the bonnet. That stops, that kills basically the ECU for it, but it basically stops the valves opening and closing, so it can't auto level, it can't dump itself to the ground when you're driving, most importantly, and it means that you can drive like that. Basically, it makes it safe to drive. It's only really a temporary thing. If you've got a problem, obviously the best thing to do is to solve that problem, because when the air suspension is working, it is, you know, the best. But what I've done is I've actually wired in a switch on the dashboard, so I can just flick the air suspension off if needed. So if I'm driving along, suddenly the red light comes on, that means it's going to dump all its air. If you're quick, you flick the switch off, it won't dump the air. You still want to find a safe place to pull over and plug the IRD in and just make sure you're still sitting level, because I've had it before where it jacks the back up and then kills the air suspension. So you want to make sure it's all level, and then keep it off until you can get to somewhere and properly diagnose the problem. But the problem I was having was always consistently the rear left height sensor. I went through multiple sensors, both aftermarket and then eventually fitted genuine, after realizing that you can buy 4 genuine sensors for the price of two aftermarket ones. So I replaced all the sensors, replaced 12 inches of the wiring loom as well, because I thought that was the problem. But it basically kept coming up with general electric failure, rear left height sensor, or algorithm based failure on the rear axle. Basically what it does is, on this screen you'll see if it's not working, it's working at the moment, but if you have a faulty sensor, suddenly that sensor will start reading -90. That may be correct, but if you look at wander around the car and have a look, and the car is level and it's not clearly up or down on that particular corner, and you know there's a problem with that. A lot of people, as I did, would just go straight to, right, I'm just going to replace the sensor. Replace the sensor. That didn't work. So then the next logical thing is to replace the wiring up to the sensor, because they are known to fail. But actually, what I found, and I found this after doing a little bit of digging online. No one pointed to it at all. They actually pointed me in the wrong direction. But by pointing me in the wrong direction, by pointing me to the wiring plugs in the front wheel arch, they aren't to do with the sensors. The height sensors don't go through that wiring, just in case you're curious. I was like, right, okay, so the wiring, the sensors must go through another set of wiring, another set of plugs into the car, because I could unplug any of those and not lose the wire, not lose the sensors. So it's clear they don't go through there. So they started looking and tracing the wiring around, and the wiring goes to a plug to the rear of the passenger side wheel. And what that does is that you've got two big connectors behind the rear wheel. They are relatively exposed to the elements, let's say, and they're right behind the wheel, so they get caked in mud if you go off-roading, they get absolutely drowned in water if you're on the road. And what happens is a little bit of moisture or a little bit of dirt gets in there, and it just makes the contact not that nice. No corrosion, I saw absolutely no corrosion in it at all, but it just means that it just isn't as, because the sensors are very sensitive by their nature, because they're low voltage, and they have to be very sensitive to make note of the suspension travel and everything like that. It just affected it, and it was very intermittent. It would just randomly happen, and then you turn it off and reset it, and it then happened again 10 minutes later, and then it happened again 10 minutes later, and then you stop and get to your destination and leave the car for a day and then go back, and it wouldn't do it at all for another 2 weeks. So it was really intermittent. And then I started noticing it did it a bit more perhaps when it was wet outside. So that then started to make me think, okay, so maybe this isn't a sensor issue, maybe this is a electrical connection issue. So anyway, I'm just going to show you the plug that I'm talking about, so you can look at it. Let me just turn my ID off before it drains the battery. Another thing to note as well is you can leave IRD plugged in for, like, certainly overnight. It draws, even though it's got a light on it, it draws basically no power at all. I've accidentally left mine in for 2 or 3 days, no issues at all, and that's on a slightly weak battery that's been sat around for 6 months. So anyway, we're here at the rear wheel. This is easier with it jacked up. It's easier than it currently is if you put it in off-road mode, and then even easier if you actually jack it up. But see this plastic cover here? Behind this there are some plugs, and you see, not very easy to get the camera in here. You see these two plugs here, black one, and there's a white one a bit further around the corner. If you can see that on there, just there. Yeah, obviously, as you can see, these are massively open to the elements. So what you need to do is basically open each one. They've got the little tab on the side that you pull. You just pull that. That splits the two parts of the plug apart, and then you just clean it. So I normally use a bit of brake cleaner to clean it, electrical cleaner, anything like that, and then put it back together with a bit of WD-40 just to try and help it stay dry for a bit longer. Ultimately, I think the answer really is it needs some better protection there. But at the moment, with everything else going on with the rest of the car and that, that's low on my priority list. I'll just, it's not a hard thing to do, so I'll just clean it every now and then for now. But yeah, cleaning that, putting it back together 3 times now has solved air suspension issues. And as I said at the beginning, as I say to everyone, it's free, it's really easy to do. Go to that bit first, because it could save you. I mean, I spent probably 200 quid on sensors and wiring, and many evenings figuring it out, rewiring it, and before I came to that. Had I have gone to that first, I would have saved myself a whole load of grief, and that suddenly then makes the fact I got the car very cheap with an air suspension light really, really good. Slightly on that subject, it's always the thing to do with these. Everyone jumps straight to expensive problems. I had it with the starter motor and alternator. Straight away, it's going to be your alternator that's failed. So replace the alternator. Oh, still doesn't work. It's going to be a starter that's failed. Okay, replace the starter motor. No, still doesn't work. Not once did someone mention that the 400 amp mega fuse could have blown. Check that. Lo and behold, 400 amp mega fuse is blown. Before putting a new fuse in, I would like to find out why it had blown. So I did a continuity test and found that the main battery cable had robbed through on the front of the diff. So removed said cable from the diff, re-insulated it, because it hadn't actually, the fuse had done its job. It hadn't melted anything, it just touched and then blown the fuse, and it started straight up. So that was about 300 quid of new alternator and starter motor that I didn't need to buy. Had I have thought about it logically and gone through the free processes first before you start throwing money at it. And that's taught me a lot with this car. Always think of what else it could be that isn't going to cost you money before you start throwing money at it. Because I dare say there's a lot of people out there that moan about how expensive these cars are to run, but don't actually think about what the problems are. And I think there's a lot of cars that have a lot of new parts fitted to them that aren't necessary. I'm not saying that there are times when there are also very expensive parts that do need to be fitted, an engine going bang being one of them. But there are lots of things that actually are probably quite an easy fix, and people just work around that because someone else has told them it's probably going to be this. So I've definitely learnt to take my own advice, think through things logically, and on the whole, where there are some very clever people out there, ignore what a lot of people say on the forums, because as I've proven with the whole manual V8, despite everyone telling me it's not possible, it is possible. It definitely is possible, because I've done 1,500 miles in it now. So it's, yeah, you just have to be careful what you look at online, what you read online, and have a go at doing stuff yourself. Quite a lot of the time it is just cleaning a plug will solve the problem, and if it doesn't solve the problem, what have you lost? So definitely recommend having a go, cleaning it, even if you make it a yearly maintenance thing. If you don't have a problem, it might prevent a problem. So that's what was going to be a little bit, but has probably turned into about 15 minutes. But hopefully that helps someone get back on the road for not a lot of money. Thank you for watching. I'm hoping to do a bit more on an actual update of the car soon. Still a couple of gremlins with ABS not talking to various modules, think it's a corrupt CCF file on the ECU, despite Nanocom telling me that's not possible. I have bought a copy of STD, JLR STD, so I've decided, sod it, I'm just going to do it properly and do it myself. So I am just waiting for the cable to arrive, then I can plug it in and hopefully get full diagnostics and access to everything, not just little bits here and there. So I'm excited for that. Then hopefully we can solve the problem, and in about 15 days I'm going down to Dorset in it for a green laning weekend with the local Land Rover club. So that should be nice, and I'd really like to have working air suspension and working transfer case. That would be really nice to be able to have low range to go off-roading, but we shall see. So yeah, so I'll do an update video on that soon, but other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.